Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on Opportunity Zones 2.0, How to Apply for Census Tract Designation. The purpose of today's webinar is to inform you of the upcoming Opportunity Zones 2.0 Census Tract Selection Round and discuss how local communities can apply for Opportunity Zone 2.0 Census Tract Designation. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Heather Haregrove, KHC's Housing Supply Accelerator. Part of my job is to educate and provide resources to communities throughout the state that are interested in increasing their housing supply. We're joined today by Devin Richardson, the Director of Existing Business and Community Development with the Cabinet for Economic Development. A little bit of housekeeping. Your cameras are off and your mics are muted. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording and the slides will be sent out to all participants who registered. It will also be posted on KHC's website and the Cabinet for Economic Development's website in the near future. The chat has been disabled, but you should see the Q&A feature at the top or bottom of your screen. Please enter any and all questions that you have, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. If there are any questions that we aren't able to get to today, we'll follow up after the webinar. A little bit of background before we dive into our presentation for those that may not be as familiar with the Opportunity Zones program. It was first launched in 2017 as a tax incentive to get taxpayers to leverage unrealized capital gains to make tax-efficient investments into distressed areas. Basically, any person or business with a realized capital gains from stocks, businesses, real estate, etc., could defer paying capital gains taxes by reinvesting that gain into a qualified opportunity fund. Those funds would then be invested within a designated low-income census tract, otherwise known as an opportunity zone. In doing so, the investor gets the benefit of a tax deferral on the capital gains, and the development gets the benefit of another source of cash to include in the capital stack for the development, which can fill the gap and reduce the need for grants, loans, and tax credits. The current designated Opportunity Zone census tracts were selected by the governors that were in office in 2018. The Opportunity Zone program originally was not permanent, so the first round of selected census tracts get to keep their Opportunity Zone designation until December 31st, 2028. However, in 2025, the BBB made the Opportunity Zones program permanent. So governors in all states have the opportunity to select a second round of Opportunity Zone census tracts. The next group of census tracts will be Opportunity Zones 2.0 census tracts. The U.S. Department of Treasury hasn't released the final list of eligible census tracts yet, but preliminary data shows that Kentucky will have approximately 542 census tracts that meet the criteria for the Opportunity Zones 2.0 program. However, of those 542 census tracts, only 25% may be selected as Opportunity Zone census tracts, which equates to 136 census tracts. Again, those numbers are based off of preliminary data, and we won't know for sure how many census tracts are eligible until the U.S. Department of Treasury releases the final list, which we hope will be any day now. Per the current guidance that we have, the governor's window is supposed to open for census tract selection July 1st, 2026, and the Opportunity Zones 2.0 census tract designation will begin January 1, 2027. The selected census tracts will maintain their designation for 10 years, and there will not be another opportunity for Opportunity Zone designation until the year 2036. So you may be asking yourself why KHC is hosting this webinar. After all, KHC's focus is on housing, not necessarily economic development. But I like to make the argument that in order to have successful economic development, you have to have the housing stock to support the workforce. We don't have a complete picture yet of how well the Opportunity Zones 1.0 program did across the country because data collection requirements were not in place when the program was originally launched. However, the BBB did put data collection requirements in place, and some early reports are suggesting that approximately 75% of the Opportunity Zone 1.0 investment across the country was invested in real estate. That said, the investment wasn't evenly distributed across the country, and some areas did better than others, depending on the effort communities put into marketing the Opportunity Zones program. KHC sees the Opportunity Zones 2.0 round as an opportunity to attract capital to Kentucky for residential development, which will help with a housing deficit of over 200,000 units that were identified in our 2024 housing supply gap analysis. We want to provide technical support for communities across Kentucky to help them be successful in the second round of Opportunity Zones. We anticipate hosting a number of technical assistance webinars on various topics relevant to Opportunity Zones, the first of which is today's webinar focusing on how to apply for Opportunity Zones 2.0 census tract designation. For those who might have joined a few minutes late and missed it, this webinar is being recorded and will be distributed to everyone that registered. The recording will also be posted on KHC's and the Cabinet for Economic Development's websites in the near future. Your cameras are off and your mics are muted. We've also disabled the chat to keep all questions in one location. You should see the Q&A button at the top or bottom of your screen. Please use the Q&A feature to ask any and all questions, and we'll get through as many as possible after the presentation. Devin, thanks so much for joining us, and now I'll turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you, Heather. So thank you so much for that introduction. As she mentioned, my name is Devin Richardson, and I'm a director at the Cabinet for Economic Development. And today, on behalf of KHC and the Cabinet, I wanted to talk about some updates on the application process for Opportunity Zones 2.0. Since the last webinar in November, there have been a couple of updates we wanted to provide everyone so that way we could provide you all with as much information going forward. So today I'm going to be covering first updates on the track selection. So just some news that we've received from the Department of Treasury, or lack thereof, honestly. Some cabinet updates and what we've been working on, the application process and what to expect moving forward, how the communities can begin to prepare for the application, and then I'm going to close with any question and answer any questions that you all might have. So updates on track selection. So as Heather alluded to, and as I just said, like right now, the Department of Treasury has still not released which areas are eligible for track designation. The original release was scheduled for December of last year, but there was a significant delay, or there has been a significant delay due to the government shutdown that took place last year. There have been several resources released, most notably the Novogradic map that I'll touch on a little bit later in the presentation. And because of this, the cabinet has not released the actual official application since we want to make sure the communities had as much the official information from the United States government before we actually disperse the application. But despite having that delay, the cabinet has developed an application that we will release once the Department of Treasury makes an official announcement. But some good news is that the ACS survey has come out from the Census Bureau, and this is the document that the Department of Treasury uses to make their selections. And we're hopeful that the announcement for the actual tracks that can be designated will come out this month. So in the interim, we've been working as a cabinet to make sure that we have an application prepared and created criteria for the application. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the criteria for that application, but as I mentioned, the contents are complete, and we are going to be providing that to the communities now so that they can be prepared for the upcoming application cycle. Moving forward, the cabinet is going to be working with a third-party evaluator, and they're going to be there to make sure that we can use as much data as we can gather as possible to make economically impactful decisions for the track designation. And once the application is live as well, the cabinet has developed a marketing strategy, and we're going to be heavily marketing to all the communities so that they have as much information as possible. This is going to include announcements on the website, future webinars, and even more presentations. So please make sure to stay tuned, and I'll be providing a link later on in the presentation to our website where we'll post all the information. So, as I mentioned, the primary purpose for this webinar was to talk about the application criteria and how the application process is going to work. So compared to last time, whenever we did the Opportunity Zones 1.0 program, there wasn't really a sense of like actual criteria for the application. And it seemed as though we dropped the ball a little bit on actually designated opportunity zones. So this time around, we wanted to have a structured application so that way we can make the most economically impactful decisions as possible. So we have developed this criteria as shown on the screen, and I'll be going through each one of those just to talk a little bit about what we are expecting. So first and foremost, federal guidelines. So we want to make sure that the places that the community is selecting actually are able to be selected as opportunity zones. So to that end, we want to make sure that you meet all the federal guidelines as outlined by the Department of Treasury for the program. This includes for rural areas, making sure that the population does not exceed 50,000, and that you meet the median family income threshold of 70%. Number two is infrastructure and public safety access. So we want to make sure that the tracks themselves should be proximate to accessible roadways and existing infrastructure, and that it's located within reasonable distance of first responders, emergency services, and public safety personnel. 3 is site readiness. So sites should be capable of supporting near-term project development and ideally be shovel-ready. Next, number 4 is alignment with statewide and regional strategy. So we want the applications to demonstrate some sort of alignment with Kentucky's target industries, regional growth corridors, and existing state investments in workforce, infrastructure, and site development. Next is market demand, and highest and best use. So we really want the communities to provide some sort of evidence of some sort of credible market interest and explain how that tract they're selecting can be best used to meet the future strategies for those areas and so they can be the most economically impactful. Next is workforce availability. So we want to make sure that the communities, when they're selecting these certain tracks, also have some proximity to some available labor and access to training partners. Next is local incentives. So, of course, the state does have their own incentive programs, but local communities also have their own local incentives. So we want to make sure that the communities should be able to demonstrate some local financial and policy commitments in the application. And last but not least, of course, is long-term economic impact. So the community should also be able to describe some anticipated outcomes for the tracts that they're selecting. And on the reporting side, as I mentioned in the webinar back in November, the federal government has made it clear that they want better reporting mechanisms this time around for the tract selection. So as a cabinet, we're going to require communities that are selected to report to the Opportunity Zone team on how the certain tracts are being used. That can range from the total amount of investment that they've seen, the projects that they're working on, or what they anticipate what the projects will be in that area. So the application process. So as I mentioned, we're still waiting for the official announcement from Treasury. We will definitely release the application once the announcement is made, and communities should be able to include all of these things in the application. Number 1 is census tract identifiers. Of course, you need to be able to identify the census tract that you're selecting. A narrative. So a narrative meaning that you should be able to explain why you're selecting that area. What do you want it to be? Do you want it to be manufacturing focused? Do you want it to be real estate focused, et cetera, et cetera? So just some sort of story of some kind or some sort of way to explain it in a way for us to be able to identify that you've thought through about what you want this tract to be. Next is evidence for demand. So as I mentioned before, you should be able to indicate that there is some sort of strategy for you to bring in private investors into that area. Letters of support. So similar to last time, local community leaders will be submitting the application on the portal. So the letters of support simply just means that you have the local community leader, whether it be a mayor or a judge executive, submit the form. Then, of course, we want a summary of the local incentives just to see what kind of local incentives you might have as a local area. And then a site readiness document just to showcase that the place that you have is shovel ready or could be shovel ready in the near future. And just as I mentioned, the local community leaders will be the ones submitting the applications. And we anticipate that the applications will close late May. But however, I just want to say that this is tentative. Since we've seen a lot of delays from the Department of Treasury in releasing which tracts can be designated, we are currently assessing whether or not the actual tract designation will be out this month. And depending on how late the actual official announcement comes and how long it might take, we anticipate that we could actually extend the application window. But right now, tentatively, we're looking for mid to late May to close the application. So in the meantime, communities should start to really consider how they're going to prepare the applications and just think of some questions. So looking at all those criteria, being able to answer some of these questions in the applications, we think that if you look at these questions that I've displayed on screen, you will be able to make a more effective application. So number 1, try to think of why this tract is more competitive for an opportunity zone designation compared to other eligible tracts in the region or state. Number 2, what is the economic development strategy for the OZ investors? 3, which industries and sectors are targeted within the zone? 4, which state and local stakeholders are involved in deployment? 5, what unique assets or locational advantages make this tract attractive to OZ investors? And 6, if this tract is not designated, what economic development opportunities would likely be delayed or lost? If you're able to answer any of these questions in the application, it's more likely that you might be selected for one of the tracks. And as I mentioned before, a third-party evaluator will be looking over all the applications, and these are some of the key questions they're going to be looking for as they're evaluating the applications for us. And as I mentioned before, there are several resources out there. One I wanted to highlight was Novogradac. As you can see in the graph here, this is Kentucky, and this actual graph is based off the ACS 2024 survey. While it's not official, this is making a speculation of the potential opportunity zones for under 2.0. As you can see here, they have it broken down between what will qualify as a rural opportunity zone, what would be considered a normal opportunity zone, and if it might not be eligible at all. So I wanted to share this resource, and it'll be included in the presentation. There's a link down there that you'll be able to click on once the presentation is shared, and you would be able to see if your community would actually qualify for an opportunity zone or which opportunity zone it could qualify for. However, I do want to make this clear that this is a speculative graph, so it's not official. But this would be, I think, a good starting resource to see if your community might be eligible to be designated as an opportunity zone. And also in the meantime, I highly recommend that you continue to monitor the website. Over the next few months, we're going to make sure that we include information, key dates, and guidelines and post them on the website. So if you scan that QR code, it'll go directly to our website. And following this presentation, in the near future, we'll be uploading this and, of course, the PowerPoint itself and other resources as we move along. And with that, that'll close sort of the main part of the presentation. I wanted to save a lot of room for question and answers because I imagine there are going to be a lot, and I'm happy to answer any that you have. Please make sure that you use the Q&A function, and we'll make sure to respond to them in the order in which we receive them. Thank you all.
Thanks, Devin. So right now, the Q&A is open. We don't have any questions in there yet, so people feel free to drop in any questions that you have. This is a fairly new topic for a lot of people if it's not something that you really followed before. So, no question is a dumb question, and we may not have the answers to it ourselves today, but, we're happy to research and get back with everybody later on. But Devin, I'm going to just kick it off with just a couple of questions, follow-ups to the information that you had. So how much time, you've seen the application. It's not live yet for anybody else to see it yet, but how much time do you think realistically it would take for a community to be able to put together the application? Like, as far as how many hours do you think that it would take? And do you think that it's going to be something that potentially people would need to hire a consultant to help them with? Or, is this something that they should be able to do on their own?
That's a really great question. Thank you, Heather. I think, honestly, it's going to be really community specific because some communities might have better resources or people to develop that application compared to others. I think the contents of the application should be fairly doable for each local community. And I think, honestly, you could spend, depending on how much in-depth research you want to do and which tracks you think would be the most eligible, you could spend anywhere between a day to 2 days on the application to being much more long-term. You want to make sure you make the correct actual sort of designations based on where you see the most economically impactful decisions being, to doing maybe 3 to 4 days, maybe 5 days. It really depends on each community. So it's really hard for me to make an actual sort of guesstimation, for a lack of a better phrase, to how long it might take for each individual community. But in terms of the application itself and the contents, I think every community will be able to provide something within a reasonable time limit, because we're not I mentioned everything in the present, what we're looking for prior for the criteria. We're just going to be looking for that narrative. We're going to be looking for which tracks they're selecting, why they're selecting it, and just a letter from the local community leader. So if you're able to get all that in a reasonable time, you could have it ready within 2 to 3 days, realistically. So we think that there's a good amount of time for all the communities to actually submit their applications, but depending on how long they want to work on it, it's really up to them. So so it's a way of saying it all depends. Sorry.
Gotcha. Is there an application fee?
An application fee? No, there's not going to be an application fee as of right now.
Okay.
It's just all going to be submitted onto the portal. So once it actually is live, you'll be able to download it directly from the website and then just submit it directly into our link. And then after that, it'll be filtered out. We'll have it sort of separated by community and we'll be able to see it that way. There's not going to be a fee, no.
Okay. And when will communities find out if they've actually been selected? I know that the window, I think it's supposed to open up July 1st for the governor to take a look at things. He has a certain period of time to make decisions, and then there's supposed to be an announcement at some point. So you have timelines on that.
So we really wanted to, of course, like timelines may shift depending on when Treasury decides to release the tracks. Was hopeful for like an impromptu release like during the presentation, but it didn't happen. Sadly, I get manifested enough. But we're hopeful like within that 120-day window from July 1st that once the governor makes his selections, and we'll let the communities know because he's going to have the final pin for actually deciding. So once he makes his selections based on the package that we send him, then we'll let the communities know whether or not they've been selected or not. So
Okay.
it'll all really depend on whenever the final sort of like pin is signed and we actually make the announcement, which that really depends on the governor's office. So it's really hard to answer that question, but it'll be near to next, hopefully immediate, like right after knowing that.
And do you mind to scroll back to, you had a list of questions of what people should kind of ask themselves to see how competitive they
Sure.
might be.
This one right here, the application
Yeah.
preparation screen. Yes.
Yeah. So, fun fact, Kentucky is in the top 15 of the country of having the most number of census tracts that potentially are eligible. So, obviously this is a great list of questions that people should ask themselves, but let's say somebody is looking at it and they're thinking, well, we're not really competitive, so I'm not going to waste my time. Because of the fact that we have so many census tracts that potentially are eligible, would you recommend that people, submit an application regardless of if they feel like they're very competitive or not? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I would much rather have more applications than not enough. So
Yeah.
please, even if you don't like are not able to answer any of these sort of particular questions like in depth, like if you don't see yourself as really competitive, still submit an application because we also are going to be having like our own evaluation of like what we want to see, I think, as the sort of like state moving forward and making some decisions based on where we see we could actually have an economic impact for the Commonwealth moving forward. So while you might not think you're competitive, it might actually go in line with our sort of like regional strategy for economic development. So please, I encourage everyone to submit an application, even if you do not think that if you don't think you're competitive, because you might end up being more competitive than you think, or you might or you might be in the case to where like you have some unique asset or locational advantages that private investors might like that you could potentially bring in private investment that way. So while you might not be quote unquote strong in one category, you could be strong in another.
Great. Well, I can't believe we don't have any questions because with as many people as we have on here, I'm going to
I see
unmute people's.
two, Heather.
Do you see? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great. Because I
I
don't see
see
any.
two. Okay. So,
Wonderful.
this is a question from Katie Littman. If a municipality wants to nominate multiple tracts for designation, will they submit a separate application for each tract? No, if you're going to nominate multiple tracts, if it's sort of in the same sort of like region / like municipality, I recommend just doing it all in one application. That would probably be a lot easier. So don't do separate ones, just do one. And then number two here, this is from, I can't see the name because for some reason it has a reaction post over your name. 1 second, I can't, Teams. So Perry, so does the website have the presentation information from November? And for those who did not get a chance to participate on that day, yes, it does. So if you go to our website now, you can actually see all the previous webinar information. We had a video uploaded.
And we have a question from Myron. Hang on one second here, Myron. I'm going to, okay, I've fixed it so that you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It is telling me that the chat is turned off for this meeting.
That is correct, but you should see the Q&A button. Hopefully everybody sees the Q&A, and I've actually fixed it now so that anybody can unmute themselves. So if the Q&A is not working for people, feel free just to raise your hand, just like Myron just did, and we will definitely get to you.
I don't see the Q&A, but my question is this. Okay. When I went on the government track just a minute ago, it shows that Elliott County is not on this list. And I just want number one, some clarification. Number two, if we are not on this list, does this mean that we're out of the game, so to speak?
So as far as I know, the Department of Treasury hasn't released what the official tracks are yet. But in the case to where you wouldn't be eligible from the federal guidelines, you would be out of the game, because if you don't meet the federal guidelines, then we can't select you as a potential tract.
That said, though, check the map and make sure you've got the right overlays on there, because I looked at a map not too long ago for your county, and it was showing 2 out of the 3 census tracts were eligible. So potentially, again, we don't have the final list, but based on the 2024 ACS data, which is what that Novogradac map is built off of, it was showing 2 out of 3.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And it looks like some of the chat has updated for the Q&A side, Heather, so I'm going to go through some of them if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, because I'm not seeing anything, so please do.
So this is from Jacob, not a question, but as a point of clarification, communities that need support in completing the application can contact our local area development district. Sorry, words are hard today. But yes, please, if you want to, for completing the application, work hand in hand, like with your local area development districts, because they'll be probably some of the key contacts to help, like with designating a lot of the zones, because they'll know which areas would be the most, I would say, needed to be sort of selected to where they could actually make some sort of decision that would be the most economically impactful. So from Karen, can you state again the date the application deadline is? So right now, as I mentioned, Karen, it's very tentative, because as of right now, the Department of Treasury has not told us what areas are actually eligible for designation. And we wanted to have a 1.5 month to 2 month window for communities to submit the application. So we were looking at mid to late May. We don't have an exact date there yet, but depending on how long it takes, we could potentially extend the date for the submission, because there's a 120-day window for the governor to sign after July 1st. So depending on when the Department of Treasury releases those tracts, and two, if we assess that communities need more time to submit the application, we might push that deadline back. Once we know a little bit more, I think probably mid-March, we'll know whether or not we need to actually push the actual sort of deadline back, because we're hoping to release the application in the middle of March sometime for communities to start actually doing it. So we want to have that 1.5 to 2 month window for communities to actually submit the application. And it can be extended. So once I think we open it up and we come together as a cabinet and decide when we want to close it, then we'll put the official close date on the website. So just make sure that you're monitoring that.
The questions are now popping up on my side as well.
Okay,
did
great.
you answer the question from Bridget about the industrial park?
I didn't know. I was going from top to bottom. So,
yeah. Okay. So Bridget Compton asked, she said, we have an industrial park in development currently that we are applying for this Opportunity Zone 2.0. We have a build-ready pad. Would this be eligible for the Opportunity Zone, since it is the most important economic zone in Adair County? Most all infrastructure is in place.
Yes. So if it meets the federal guidelines for 2.0, then you could most definitely use that as a tract sort of submission for it. So if that industrial park falls in sort of like the area where a tract might be, you could submit that as the Opportunity Zone area. That is totally fine.
Darren Jordan, he is asking, in using the Novogradac speculative map, what is meant by the designation of likely eligible and likely rural, and how do we anticipate such designation ultimately how will that impact the eligibility if you're designated as rural or not rural? Is that going to impact your eligibility?
Okay, so there's two sort of primary opportunity zones that are going to be sort of from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that came out, and there's normal opportunities. I'm going to use the word normal here just to, for lack of a better phrase, and then rural opportunity zone. So if you meet the threshold for a normal opportunity zone, meaning you don't, or the area doesn't meet the median or does meet the median income family threshold of 70%, then you would be eligible to be designated as a regular opportunity zone, which comes with the sort of certain benefits of a 10% basis step up on taxes. And then also, you do not, for the private investors that invest in the area, they don't have to pay a capital gains tax. So that's the regular one. For the rural area, if you meet all the requirements, plus the area is 50,000, has a population of 50,000 or less, then you meet the qualification for a rural opportunity zone. And this one has a little bit more extended benefits, most notably that instead of that 10% basis step up, you have the 30% basis step up. So depending on the population of the area, that'll determine and of course, like the income threshold, that'll determine whether or not you just have the regular rural opportunity zone designation or the rural opportunity zone designation. Hopefully that makes sense. And it won't ultimately impact your eligibility to be selected as a zone, of course. Like if you're eligible for the rural opportunity zone program, we're going to designate you as a rural opportunity zone. So it won't overall impact your eligibility. Hopefully that makes sense.
Did you answer Mary Hopkins' question about the third party and what they're going to be used for? If not, I'll read them.
Oh, no, I haven't, but
Okay.
I referenced it in the presentation. So the third party is mostly just going to be used for one application, sort of like monitoring and filtering, because we anticipate hopefully we'll get a lot of applications. And two, depending on the tracks that the local communities select, they're going to be providing us with an economic impact analysis statement to determine what potential sort of economic impacts that particular tract could have if it's selected as an opportunity zone.
And one more time, can you state the date that the application deadline is again?
The deadline?
Mm-hmm.
So, as I mentioned, we are hoping that it'll be mid to late May. We don't have an exact date yet because we want to leave it open for the potentiality of actually being extended if needed. So, what I would recommend for local communities is try to have them ready by at least mid to late May. And if we end up extending it, it'll just give you a little bit more time to actually complete the application.
Great. I do not see additional questions. Do you see anything past Karen Simpson?
I see one about Edna. Edna, yes, the slides will be posted on both our website and then also KHC's website, along with this webinar too. So you'll have access to both the presentation and the actual webinar.
Great.
And I don't see any more questions either. But if no one, there might be some people that might not know how to use the Q&A function. So if I'm totally fine with doing what we did with Myron as well. If they would like to raise their hand, that would be fine.
And if you can't figure out how to do that, if you can at least figure out how to unmute yourself, go ahead and start talking. I've got it fixed now where anybody can unmute. And I think we may have another question. Oh, here's some more. Okay, from Paige Coe, just a general opportunity zone question. But when an investor wants to invest in an opportunity zone tract, do they have to apply for the tax benefits of that, like tax credits, or is it automatic?
So, do you mean like the tax benefits that come from investing in the opportunity zone page? So, do you mean like if a private investor chooses to look at an area, let's say in one of the counties, for example, and they invest in sort of the opportunity fund there, do they automatically get the tax benefit or do they have to apply for the tax benefit? Is that what you're asking, Paige? If just want to clarify.
Yes, that's what I was asking.
Okay. I'm going to be completely honest. I do not know that. I do not know whether or not they actually have to apply or not, or if it's an automatic thing. So that's something I can look into and get back to you on.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Katie Littman from Louisville. And just to add on to that question, my understanding is that that's really managed in terms of the benefits is really managed at the fund level. So whoever's creating the Qualified Opportunity Fund, they're sort of responsible for, managing their investors and making sure that they can apply for the tax benefits. So I think on the project level, the projects, of course, are going to be trying to work with opportunity funds to get investment, but my understanding is that they don't necessarily have to apply. That's really handled at the fund level. And just to add on a question too, I saw Donna Angel from Berea. She commented on my question, which is why I think you guys maybe haven't seen it. But she asked, could you suggest types of local municipality tax incentives that could be offered by the city? And I wanted to ask about that as well. Is that kind of just lifting up our existing programs that could be sort of that could be added on to the opportunity zones program to help make projects happen, or is that like specifically a matching sort of opportunity zone specific program?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think if we're going to sort of like, I guess, be strategic about this, we really want to make sure that that the local tax incentives can stack on top of what the Opportunity Zone program might actually have to offer. So I think if we sort of like blend all of this together to where you could, well, I don't know a lot of the sort of like local tax incentives for that, but I think if, let's say like there's a project that might be happening in Louisville, for example, then depending on what sort of local tax incentives they have, the Opportunity Zone sort of tax sort of like investment could go along with that, along probably with the state level. So all of them can blend together. That's where I think we see the most ideal sort of, I think, coalition of things happening. Hopefully that makes sense.
Right. I'm not seeing any other questions. We can stay on here for another minute or two just to see if additional people ask questions. If not, we can give you about 20 minutes of your day back.
And also too, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the portal too. Any of the questions you submit on our website go directly to me and then other members of the Opportunity Zone team. So we'll get back to you.
Still not seeing anything in here. These are great questions though, everybody. Appreciate it. We appreciate all of you all participating today and joining us. And Devin, thanks for such a great presentation. I think Devin and I may do another one together once the applications are actually open. So stay tuned for that. Any updates on additional webinars will be posted on the Housing Accelerator newsletter. So if you are signed up for that, please take a look at that for upcoming webinars. And I think, Devin, if you're good with it, we'll go on ahead and close out for today.
Yes, I'm totally fine with it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to always be a resource. And so please, any one of you, like I mentioned before, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me anytime, either via the website or via my email. Always happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Well, thanks everybody so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.